Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am so excited about today's special guest because if you've ever talked to me about IEPs, transitions is just like my thorn right now because it's so often neglected. So today's special guest, Lisa Shaw with Mosaic Haven, is a specialist in transition. So Lisa, welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you for allowing me to join you here today. I'm so excited to talk about transitions because I totally agree. They are totally neglected and an afterthought. And how I got to this point of just having a passion with transition planning for families is with my own lived experience with my son that's now 20 and he's on the autism spectrum. But as we went through our journey, we continuously struggled with him in school from being able to make progress academically, but also being able to even access his education appropriately because of his behavioral issues. And it wasn't until he was age 10 that we finally, after doctoring numerous different places, that we finally got that diagnosis of autism. And at that time, I was really, really excited that we had the diagnosis because I thought that truly would set our son on a great path because we'd have a better understanding of what his needs are for school. Unfortunately, that IEP meeting that we had soon after being diagnosed, it did not turn out the way I was anticipating, my husband and I. Instead of us going in there and really tearing into his IEP and making sure we get it more individualized for him, that we were sat down by the special ed director and also a board certified behavioralist at the table that basically told us that due to his diagnosis and due to the past history that we were experienced in school, that we should start looking for group homes for him, and that we needed to be prepared that he most likely won't even be able to graduate due to his behaviors. And
At age 10?
At age 10, they had already provided what his future destiny was going to be. In that he would not be able to drive or socialize. And basically they started secluding him in school. So, that was an emotional meeting. I have to admit, I fell apart after that meeting.
As any parent would have.
After I had all my tears and everything, I pulled myself up and I said to my husband, I see so much potential in our son. We don't know how to tap into it, but we need to tap into it. And then he can soar and he could succeed. And I don't believe these professionals of what they are saying our son's destiny is. We just don't have him on the right path. And that's when I started dreaming big. I started going to the place in my thoughts of what's my end game for my son. Where does
Good place to start. You got to know where you want to be before you can start the path.
Exactly. And so my husband and I dreamed big of, what kind of capabilities do we want our son to have when he transitions out of special education? What's his life lifestyle going to look like? What is the employment's going to look like? What's his engagement in the community going to look like? And I drew up that concept in my head, and I communicated that to the IEP team. And that's when I really dug into, we need to start, because it was right around the corner of him being age 12, to start talking about transition planning, to start telling them this is what his post-secondary life is going to look like. So now we need to, as a team, individualize his IEP to give him the skills, the opportunities and experiences and sports needed to get him to that goal.
So in
And
other words, they need to follow the law, because
Oh,
IDEA says that clearly.
please,
Really?
that's a concept. Yes, exactly. But that was the turning point of me being able to give my son's IEP team an anchor. And I call it an anchor because all of our conversations from then on was based on, is this a good goal that will help get him to the ultimate vision of where he needs to be after he graduates from high school? And that really helped with the decision makings to know where the placement should be for him, what goals he should have, and what even supports he should have.
I love this because, most IEP meetings are, here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses, and let's do the goals on the weaknesses to build those up. But if you focus on the strengths and where we want to be, the weaknesses are going to catch up because they have to. Or, you know what? Hey, everybody jokes around. Lawyers don't do well with math. My accountant, I probably make my accountant crazy because I'm like, I don't get it. It's okay that you have weaknesses, but this is so amazing that actually focus on the adult this child is going to become.
Exactly. And, and that's how I got into helping so many families of starting to have hope for their child's future, because we do focus so much on what our children's deficits are, that the parents do lose hope of what that future is going to look like. And they get so overwhelmed, and they feel very disheartened in a dark place, because the adulthood could be a very unknown, scary spot for their child. But it doesn't have to be in today's world if we navigate the IEP process appropriately.
Yeah. No, and I have schools often. A lot of cases have come in recently that the schools are trying to push the alternative learning outcomes, which they say, oh, it's just for now. You can always go back. It's not saying he's on a certificate track. He still could be getting a high school diploma, which us on the advocate and legal side, it's baloney. Because you're taking the child out of the general education curriculum and putting the child into alternative learning outcomes. So every year they might progress on those, but they're falling farther behind.
Exactly.
And they're doing this to kids in kindergarten and first and second grade.
I know, it's horrific. Yes.
It's scary.
It is. And, at the end of the day, then you can't get caught back up if truly your ultimate dream for your child to be able to go to college, well, they need to have that diploma, not just a certificate of completion. And if you determine that too late in the game, such as the last year that they're in school, they don't have any time to gain those credits that's needed. And then you've compromised on what your dream and goals are. So if you have that anchor of what's the end game? Where do we need to get to? You have a little bit more leverage to discuss that, this alternative assessment, alternative way to learn is not going to get my child to his post-secondary vision that we need him to be.
Right. And it's all about the end game and the ultimate and the future. That's what education's excuse me, all supposed to be about, and what IDE says is that we're supposed to be preparing our children for what's next, what's
Yep.
after this.
Right.
It makes me crazy because the kids are allowed to be in school 21, 22, depending on your state.
Mhm.
And but they don't give the kids at the early ages that extra time they might need
Yep.
because so many schools won't hold a child back, fail a child in the early grades because of what it does to them emotionally,
Yeah.
which is baloney because sometimes a second year of kindergarten is all the child needs, and then they're going to flourish.
Yep.
But if you
I
don't do it now, the kid's going to just behind and running to catch up his whole life.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And that's why it's so important. I know the special education process can be so intimidating and overwhelming. But that is why it's so imperative that parents are active advocates and are
Yes.
at that table and feel like they have the skills and or they have the support if they bring in an advocate such as you and I to be at that table to ensure their voices are being heard. Because
Right.
as you know, ideal law says that parents have an equal voice at that IEP table.
Yep.
And unfortunately, parents don't. Um,
Right.
and I was
And
one of those parents that you think these are professionals and they should know best for my child, know
Yep.
better than
We
me.
all do.
Mhm. And you know what? In the ultimate world, yeah, that's probably how it should work. But in reality, the systems are currently are broken out there, and so we can't rely on that if we truly want our children to have a successful life and live a life where they feel like they have a purpose and they have value and they belong to their community. And that takes the entire school year from pre-K all the way through, grade 12 and or if you choose up through age 21, 22.
Right. And it's just, it's frustrating that parents have to bring advocates or even to the level when they need to call me as an attorney.
Yep.
I'm the advocate also because of the education background, but I also have the attorney
True.
level that
True.
schools bump it up when an attorney comes. I don't
They
know if
do.
you've seen that. They
Yep.
don't necessarily with an advocate. But it's just what I always tell potential clients and people that call is educate yourself.
Yep.
Like I don't, that's why I have my YouTube channel with over 100 videos to educate. And I tell people, if you need a topic, if you have a question, throw it in. I'll do a video real quick.
Yep.
That parents need to know that the schools don't always get it right.
Nope.
And the schools don't always have, I don't want to say they don't have the best interest of the child, but unfortunately, what happens is the schools got higher ups that are putting pressure on for certain things and won't let you do certain things and say you're not allowed to do that. And the teachers are bound because that's their job. They can't go against their
Absolutely.
employer.
Yep.
And it's just frustrating because they don't know what to do. Whereas when parents come in educated, and I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen also, but when parents come in educated and knowing the language and knowing the buzzwords,
Yeah.
they definitely perk up a lot. They perk up a little bit more because, like, wait, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I say the system's broken, it is not the teachers because they, like you even expressed, the teachers want the best for their students. That's why they got in this field. But there's so many things going up against these teachers anymore with resource constraints, with budget cuts, and like you said, administration and laws and all the documentation that they have to do besides actual direct teaching. So that's where us parents need to go in there and truly are helping that teacher to help that teacher to know exactly what your child needs are for it's easier sometimes to help the teacher to prioritize the work that she needs to do with your child if you guys are partnering and collaborating together. Otherwise, she could be floundering too, as has a humongous caseload of other
Right,
students.
and I always say, like, advocates and attorneys don't have to be adversarial, and I usually say we
Never.
don't need to be, and we shouldn't be.
Nope.
Yes, there will be a point in time where we will sue the school system if we need
Yep.
to,
Yep.
but it doesn't have to be adversarial.
Yep.
It's about the child, and that's what we need to remember. I have a client that brings a picture of her son to every IEP meeting and puts the picture up. So, like, that's who we're talking about. We're not talking
Yeah.
about this.
Love it.
We're talking
Yes.
about this kid right here.
Yep.
And
Collaboration gets you so much further than being fighting and arguing and everything. Yep.
right. And it's so, I mean, I know, so you said your business focuses, I know you do advocacy also, but you focus on the older because of transition, or do you do all?
I do all, but my niche passion just organically based on the families that I've been working with is more that age 12 to 21, that transition, because there is such a gap out there in a need. And unfortunately, the schools, the teachers aren't thoroughly trained on transition planning themselves either. So it is a new concept if the parents truly want to go in there and maximize what special education can actually provide to their child, because it's so important to maximize that special education supports and services that they can offer before you transition into adult services, because that's a totally different beast in adult services.
And the school's supposed to help transition you to adult services.
Yep.
Like, when I taught in Florida, when I was at the alternative middle in high school, we had somebody from the adult services at the IEP meeting for our kids that are ready to transition out, to make it easy. And it made me crazy when I came back up to Maryland and as an attorney, and where's the doors persons, and they're like, oh, they're not here. I'm like,
yeah,
how okay. And we gave the parents the forms. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do.
Yep, exactly. And that's where I always tell my clients that, there's that phenomena of falling off the cliff, of when special education services stop, and then the families feel like they're just falling off the cliff because they've aged out and they don't have any other services, and then the child just sits at home. And that's where I say to my families, you can avoid that phenomena, but you have to create a large runway of getting your child prepared. And that is why it's so important to start working at the age of 12 to 14 with your IEP team to get prepared for that transition to adulthood, to avoid that phenomena. Otherwise, the longer that runway, the more successful they can be as adults.
And it doesn't have to be written in stone. You can be on one runway and swerve or pivot, however you want to call it, to another, but just like knowing that end goal. And I'm assuming you help your clients come up with what's a realistic end goal.
Yes. So what I do is that when the parents reach out to me, and they pretty much reach out to me asking me, please review my child's IEP. We're struggling. We're worried. They're going to be graduating the next year or 2 years. We don't feel we have any good direction. And the first thing before I even look at their IEP, I always ask them, what's the end game? What's the 3-5 years out viewpoint looks like? What capabilities, what experiences and opportunities do you want your child to have? And I help them define that vision statement. And we use that, as I said earlier, as an anchor for me then to go into that IEP and look at it and get prepared for an IEP meeting where we can present to them, this is our vision for our child, And these are the areas maybe we need to start collaborating and tweaking for goals and everything, to make, and maybe even do additional assessments. Folks don't even understand that there is, transition assessments, and there's the standard IEP annual 3-year annual assessments, and they are different assessments. And we need to be asking for those transition assessments that parents don't know to ask, and unfortunately schools don't offer.
Right. And the school
How we
does
can
this,
start that process.
yeah, the standard stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many IEPs I saw. We'll research 4-year college. That's what every senior that wants to go to college does. Like, how is that individualized?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so after we go through that, I pretty much help the family create a transition plan that we then collaborate with the IEP team to make sure everyone knows who's accountable for which components of that transition plan, to make sure that the child continuously makes progress towards their end goals after high school. So,
right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking back to my teacher's days and, when I was in the classroom, regular ed and special ed and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I would have liked if parents came in and said, this is what we want to focus on. This is the goal.
yeah.
Because, I mean, when I taught decades ago, it was handwriting IEPs, let's put it that way. And, I was having 8 IEP meetings all in one day and having to write 8 IEPs, which I did the best I could.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you now, teachers don't learn how to write IEPs. It's never really taught. And so I'm doing the best I can. If I have a parent that comes in and is like, okay, so this is what I want, this is what I see, I love it because it's now we're working together and we're focused on the child.
Exactly. And that's why I always say that's why we fall into that cookie cutter situation, because it is, the teachers their workload is enormous, unimaginable. So it's easy to fall into the cookie cutter situation. But then on top of that, if they don't have a clear vision of where they need to get this child, then they fall back to the state standards potentially from an academic perspective instead of individualizing it. And so, I totally agree with you on that philosophy. Yep.
And they have the core standards there. So what is core standard? Does this goal meet? And then you can have a bank. And I actually had a teacher one time do the bank and not, pull a bank goal and not fill in the student's name and the numbers and stuff. And I'm like, I'm okay with using a bank goal, but then you need to individualize it for this child.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's one of the questions I love to ask teachers. And not that I like to put teachers on the spot, but I always say, why is this goal important? Where did you get this goal? And that goes back to the present levels and making sure that the present levels are written. The whole point of the present levels is this is where the child is functioned. This is where the child is, what they can do, and their weaknesses. And so what do we need to do to help them be more successful?
Yep, you got it. And that comes out of the assessments that we do too, to understand those present levels. Yep.
And knowing what assessments,
process. Yeah.
And that's a whole nother thing.
I know. And I know the system works because I've seen so many success stories. And getting back to my own son's success stories of where the IEP team members and the professionals had the destiny of my son's future. Now that he's 20 and I've used this approach, I'm happy to say that he is in the process of transitioning into living independently in his own condo.
That's awesome.
Drives.
Wow.
He works part-time in a competitive integrated work environment. When he gets done with graduates or exits out of special education this coming spring, he will be transitioning to a full-time job in that same spot.
Wow.
And he is very active in the community. He participates in the community playhouse, providing all the technical support behind the scenes. And he's on a bowling league. So he had
Amazing.
a very productive life where he
Because he
feels
had
like
you.
he has a purpose and he belongs and he has value. It's taken us a long time to get to that, but we had that vision and we had used that as our roadmap to continuously refine that IEP and transition plan to individualize it for his own purpose. And that's
Right.
how the other families I work with, how we change that trajectory of what their future is going to look like.
I'm dying to know, did you go back to that first IEP team and say, like, look at my son now? You know?
You know, when he graduated 12th grade, he was able to walk across the stage with his class, even though we didn't take the diploma yet until he exits. And so God love my son. He has such a big heart, so he doesn't see all the struggles that we've had with relationships with some of the school members. He just loves everyone. And so he wanted to invite some of those folks to his graduation from elementary, because at age 10, he was going from elementary school to junior high. And so I said to my husband, by gosh, we're going to invite him for we can show everything off. So some of them came and they're like, they even admitted, I would have never dreamt, Lisa, that Alex would have been at this point at all. I mean, they all had that same sentiment. But the other sentiment that they did have, they said, but you know what? He had a mama bear that had a lot of fire within her. And we're not surprised that he made this progress because we knew you believed in him. And I have always believed in him, and I'll never not believe in him. So that's kind of interesting, the two sentiments that they all kind of said at graduation day.
Which to me is also kind of sad that they said that they had you to fight for him. I'm like, but that's what the teachers are supposed to be doing. And I mean, I'm not knocking teachers, don't, you know, and I know it's hard enough and you can't necessarily go up against your principal and central office, but it's just the system is broken.
It is.
Like there should not be a reason to pinhole a child at that young of an age, or even younger that I have some people do, and B, to not be able to truly talk about what the needs of this child is.
Yeah.
And where we can get, you know, let's set the goal up here.
Yeah. No,
in 2 years, if we need to bring it down a little, okay, but don't start here and then see if we, you know.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. But you know what? You have to have somewhat of a reach goal, not a goal that is totally out of range,
Right. Like you're not talking about Harvard Law School, you know?
Exactly. But you'd be so surprised that the students, how they will rise to the occasion if they have the right supports and services, if you give them that push. Because my son is a perfect example that he'd be okay with status quo. But if we keep raising the bar incrementally, and making sure he's successful as we're raising the bar, he will rise always to the occasion. And that's why we are where we are. And, I always also tell parents that they are the only consistent cheerleader, advocate, dreamer on your child's team. Because from year to year, the teachers change, administrators change. And so that's why you have to have that passion within you to believe in your child and to dream for your child before it comes to fruition, because the teachers do not go along the whole journey with you. So.
Right. And it's, I hate the special education, blah, blah, blah. And somebody said, and I'm forgetting who, so I apologize if you're watching the show, but it's special education because your child is special. Because every child is special.
Yep.
You know, I hate that it's like such a negative still. Like, I know when I was younger, it was the special ed, you know, like you didn't do anything, but now what's wrong with it? So what? I'm on the spectrum and
Yep.
I have ADHD. So I can do this better than that because my brain does that, you
Exactly.
know? And
Exactly.
that's the thing. Like,
Yeah. Because they pigeonholed our kids into a stigma
oh
and
yeah,
everything, which I don't agree with. And that's where we could do a totally different segment about, employment pigeonhole, when they
yeah.
do special education provides employment opportunities and it's cleaning cafeteria tables. And I
Mhm.
have a whole slew of additional different employment opportunities that can be done at a school that's not just cleaning tables or emptying trash, such as working in the tech department,
Yeah,
working in the front office, administrative duties, things like that. But you have to come to the table and think outside the box, and also have
yeah,
that vision that my child is going to have a job beyond just the standard quo, maybe cleaning and taking trash out.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And don't take no. You know, I have one of my videos. I called it the Shefter way 'cause my father, of, yes, you're saying no now because you don't have the capability. Give me the next person who does have the capability and keep going up the ladder until you get what you want and what your child needs.
Yep. Yep.
Because, like, and I said it before, like when you bring an attorney, what's the best part about bringing an attorney versus an advocate is that somebody from central office comes.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's the difference because
Exactly.
central office, I love my central office people. They come and they're like, "Oh, no, 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 wait, let's try this." And they're more
Yep.
receptive to our suggestions
Yeah.
and they're looking outside the box and looking at whole picture because teachers can't know everything that's out there. And
Nope.
that's why central office is there, is to help give you what else is out there and to open those doors. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yes,
But yeah, that's where part of individualization of our child's education programming is truly thinking outside the box.
yeah,
That's when it's a very powerful individualized IEP and transition plan when you think outside that box.
right,
And once again, the system sometimes just gets into a rut and they're just,
yep,
it's just widgets. So let's just
yep,
process through all of these IEP meetings, and it's just a thing to do, checklist as I call it sometimes, and
yep,
that's where us parents have to have the courage to have that voice of saying no, stop. We
yep,
got to think outside the box. I'm going to challenge the status quo. Um, to be able to really make it a meaningful educational program.
right. And earlier is better. That's what I always say. Like,
Absolutely. You cannot,
yeah,
start too early.
I have people say, like, when should I bring an advocate or an attorney in? I'm like, if you're thinking about it, now. If that thought came in your head, now. Make the call
Yep.
now,
Yep.
because that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you wait 2 years, okay, fine. Yes, we can help in 2 years, but that's 2 years of your child's life that could have been
Exactly.
different.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's just not, and I'm not knocking parents or saying anybody does it wrong. We all parent differently, but it's at least educate yourself and do it and just
Yep.
be there for your child as the parent, as we all are in our ways, but it's just support them and then, be their cheerleader, be their
Yep.
biggest cheerleader.
And that's where, I always say I'd rather have parents be proactive
Yep,
than reactive. And
exactly.
unfortunately, we get called in as attorneys and advocates because it's a reactive situation.
Yep,
And it can be much harder and challenging to turn the trajectory versus if you're
exactly.
proactive and the parents reach out to folks like you or I of understanding what are their rights and how to navigate the process, it's going to be probably easier too.
Right.
And make sure that there doesn't have to be such a big correction potentially on the path if you're more
Right.
proactive.
And what I say is like, we can come in there when we're all on the same page and working together. If you wait until you're on different pages, school's digging in.
Yep,
I'm
they
not
are.
listening to that attorney or advocate. I'm the teacher. I'm the school, and I don't say teacher. I'm the school, and we know what we're doing. And then you're here, and then you've got to fight because they're
Yep,
digging in. They're not,
yep,
and that's human nature, like, is that I'm right, you're wrong
yep.
when you
It's
get to
the
adversarial.
walls come up. Yep,
Yep,
exactly.
and it's that negotiation kind of goes away.
Yep. And who loses?
The
Unfortunately, the
kid,
child,
right?
because they are losing valuable time because the time that they're in school, it's a small window. And I could go on a totally another um, podcast with you in regards to parents cannot feel or have the philosophy that it's solely the school's responsibility to prepare their child for life after high school.
Right.
That it has to be something that's worked on in all environments, at home, in the community, and at school. So that's another reason why the parents really need to be actively involved in getting their child prepared for life after high school, and not just think, I'm sending them to school and magically the school's going to get them prepared, because
Right.
that's not going to happen.
And they can't do all of it,
No,
it's it's frustrating. And we're parents, there's only so much, but that's part of the reason I started the show, is to be like, look, here's people that you can call out to help you if you need help with this or you need help with that.
exactly.
You don't have to do it all alone. That's,
No,
my tagline. You do not need to do it all alone.
no. And
That's yeah.
And that's the uniqueness I bring to my clients, because I have that lived experience. I
Right.
understand it. It's hard to even see the forest because we as parents are deep inside the woods and can't see
Yeah.
too far from day to day. Sometimes we're trying to just survive hour to hour.
Oh
Lolo,
yeah, trust
thinking
me.
about Lisa, the next 3 to 5 years for my child, how would I even have that vision?
Look,
But
I'll be honest, I can't even find homework time a lot of times, and my kids are elementary school,
Yep,
you
but
know,
see,
like
that's where proactively reaching
right,
out to specialists like myself and you to help you think through that vision um, will be a good team member to add to your
yep,
team to help you through that process, for you not to get more pressure on you, thinking the weight of the
exactly.
world's on your shoulders. Um, and the other challenge that parents do have, because they are inside the forest and they can't see the whole view, is then the parents get stuck of not being able to dream big for their child,
Right,
that they only see their deficiencies of their child today, and they don't see what capabilities that maybe they should be able to do or could do. And so that's where proactively talking to someone like myself can help the parents talk through, what, these are all the options that's out there. They don't have to just, the living independently doesn't mean that you have to go to a group home or they live at home. There's other things in between that spectrum,
yeah,
to be able to talk through that and look at, there's so many things and options out there. Don't don't settle for the status quo.
right.
Yeah.
I love that. And you have, I think if I'm remembering correctly, you have a course about dreaming big or something?
Yes, I do. I have an on-demand course where families can actually go through the course, and it's from the beginning of dreaming big, creating that vision of what their child's future is going to look like, and then taking them step by step, a comprehensive overview of how to create those post-secondary goals and what transition assessments that they should be requesting, and how then to individualize the IEP. And then if someone really wants even more customized service, that then I layer on top of that. me working through all of that with them, and even providing opportunities for me to come to IEP meetings and help facilitate these discussions. Just for the families really know that they have that support that they need.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, and that's great that there's the different levels of, and that's this show and my YouTube channel and stuff. It's like, okay, don't need us yet, go try and do it. You can do it.
Yep.
I say all the time, I wish I didn't have a job.
I know.
Because it would mean the schools are educating our children the way they need to.
Yes.
And the school system has gotten better and are doing it right, which is never going to happen, unfortunately.
I know, but
it's gotten a lot better. Definitely gotten better.
Yep.
But it's not going to be perfect.
No.
So where can people find about your show? Like about your course? Like how can they sign up for it?
Yes. So they can actually do on the web permission to dreambig.com or my business mosaichaven.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under Mosaic Haven.
Great. Thank you. And all of those links are going to be in the show notes when we post. Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been amazing. I love transitions.
Yes.
Yeah. And helping the families. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.